The storm had arrived without warning, as storms on Cathera 7 often did. One moment the sky was a pale violet canvas streaked with twin moons. The next it was a roiling mass of black clouds that swallowed the horizon whole. Lightning cracked across the atmosphere in jagged purple veins, and the wind howled like something alive and furious. Captain Mara Hensley stood at the observation deck of the research outpost, watching the tree line bend and snap under the gale's fury. The xenobiology team had been studying the native Catheran predators for 3 months now, sleek, six-limbed creatures with obsidian fur and eyes that glowed amber in the dark. Magnificent hunters, devoted parents, and currently their den was directly in the path of the flash flood barreling down from the mountains. "Captain, we need to evacuate," Lieutenant Voss said, his voice tight with urgency. The Centauri officer's head tendrils were pulled flat against his skull, a universal sign of fear among his species. "The outpost shields won't hold if the water reaches us. We have maybe 20 minutes. Mara didn't respond immediately. Her eyes were fixed on the hillside where the den was located, barely visible through the sheets of rain hammering against the reinforced glass. She'd watched the mother predator leave 3 hours ago, heading toward higher ground with the rest of her pack. They'd sensed the storm coming. But the cubs, 7 of them too young to make the journey, had been left behind in what should have been a safe burrow. Should have been. "Captain?" Voss pressed. "Start the evacuation protocol," Mara said quietly. "Get everyone to the shuttle. And you?" She was already moving toward the equipment locker, pulling out a thermal suit and a rescue harness. "Someone has to get those cubs." Voss's tendrils shot upward in shock. "Captain, those are apex predators. Even as cubs, they're dangerous. And in 20 minutes, 19 minutes now," Mara corrected, sealing her suit. "Which is why I need to move fast. This is insane." "They're animals." Mara paused at the airlock, her brown eyes meeting his. There was something in her expression that Voss had seen before in humans, that peculiar mixture of stubbornness and compassion that made them simultaneously the most frustrating and most admirable species in the Galactic Coalition. "They're children," she said simply. "And I'm not leaving children to drown." The airlock hissed shut behind her. The storm hit her like a physical wall. Rain lashed her face, cold and sharp as needles despite the suit's protection. The ground had already transformed into a churning river of mud and debris. Mara activated her suit's magnetic boots, each step a battle against the current trying to sweep her legs out from under her. The den was 100 meters uphill. In good weather, a 2-minute walk. Tonight, it might as well have been on another planet. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the landscape in stark, terrible clarity. The flood was coming, a wall of water 3 meters high carrying uprooted trees and boulders like toys. Mara checked her chronometer. 15 minutes. She climbed. Her muscles screamed. The magnetic boots kept her anchored, but each step required pulling her foot free from the mud suction before planting it again. Twice she slipped, catching herself on jagged rocks that tore through her gloves. Blood mixed with rainwater, but she kept moving. The den entrance was a dark hollow in the hillside, partially collapsed from the deluge. Mara squeezed through, her helmet light cutting through the darkness. 7 pairs of amber eyes stared back at her. The cubs huddled together in the deepest part of the chamber, mewling in distress. They were each about the size of a house cat, but their claws were already sharp, their teeth like needles. When Mara approached, the largest one, a male with a distinctive white patch on his chest, hissed and took a defensive stance in front of his siblings. "Easy," Mara murmured, extending her hand slowly. "I'm here to help." The cub's ears flattened. He didn't understand her words, but something in her tone, her posture, seemed to reach through his fear. His hiss faded to an uncertain whimper. Mara opened the rescue harness, a modified carrier designed to hold multiple subjects. "Come on, kids. Time to go." She reached for the smallest cub first, a tiny female with oversized ears who was shaking violently. The moment Mara's hands closed around her, the cub went rigid, then relaxed, pressing against her chest. One by one, Mara secured them in the harness, moving with gentle efficiency despite the clock ticking in her head. 6 minutes. The last cub, the brave male with the white patch, refused to budge until Mara physically lifted him. He squirmed once, then went still, his amber eyes locked on hers with an intensity that was almost human. The journey back was worse. The harness was heavy, the cub's combined weight making each step an ordeal. Water was rising inside the den, spurring Mara to move faster. She emerged from the entrance to find the world transformed into an apocalyptic nightmare. The flood had arrived early. 3 minutes. Hensley to outpost. She screamed into her comm. I need emergency extraction now. Static, then Voss's voice barely audible through the interference. Shuttle can't land in these conditions. I don't need you to land. Just get above me. She didn't wait for confirmation. The water was at her knees now, rising rapidly. Mara fought her way downhill, using the current instead of fighting it, her boots anchoring her just enough to maintain control. The cubs squirmed in the harness, their distress cries lost in the storm's fury. The shuttle appeared overhead, its engines screaming as the pilot fought to maintain position. A rescue cable dropped through the chaos, swinging wildly in the wind. Mara lunged for it, missed, lunged again. Her fingers closed around the metal. Pull us up, she roared. The cable went taut. Mara's feet left the ground just as the flood surge hit, a wall of water that would have crushed her instantly. The shuttle rose, hauling her and her precious cargo through the storm. Lightning illuminated the scene below, the den, the hillside, everything swallowed by the deluge. When Mara stumbled into the outpost 30 minutes later, the entire xenobiology team stopped what they were doing. She stood in the entrance, dripping a lake onto the floor, her suit torn and bloody, her face pale with exhaustion. The harness hung open on her chest. 7 pairs of amber eyes peered out from within. Every cub alive, she said, her voice hoarse. Then her legs gave out and she collapsed. The cubs survived. The outpost medical team checked them thoroughly, dehydrated, terrified, but unharmed. Within hours, they were eating and playing under careful supervision. Within days, they were thriving. But one cub was different. The smallest one, the female with the oversized ears, refused to settle unless Mara was nearby. The xenobiologist named her Ro, after the ancient human symbol. She would cry if Mara left the room, her tiny claws scrabbling against the enclosure. She would only sleep curled against Mara's side. Imprinting, Dr. Suresh explained, though his 7 eyes sparkled with something like amusement. She thinks you're her mother now, Captain. Mara looked down at Ro, who was currently draped across her lap like a furry scarf, purring contentedly. Great, she muttered. Just what I needed. A baby apex predator. But her hand was already stroking Ro's obsidian fur, and when the cub nuzzled deeper against her, Mara's expression softened. Voss watched from across the lab. I still think you're insane, he said. Probably, Mara agreed. But they're alive. That's what matters. This will be in every human relations textbook in the Coalition, Voss continued, shaking his head. The night Captain Hensley decided 7 predator cubs were worth her life. Mara smiled tiredly. They're not textbooks. They're just scared kids who needed someone to come back for them. Ro chirped softly in her sleep, her tiny claws kneading Mara's arm. Besides, Mara added, her smile widening slightly, someone has to teach them that not all 2-legged creatures are prey. Outside, the storm finally broke. The twin moons emerged from behind the clouds, casting silver light across a world washed clean. And in the outpost, a human and 7 alien cubs proved what the galaxy was slowly learning, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology, or their warfare, or their stubborn survival instinct. It was their refusal to leave anyone behind, even in the mayhem, even in the storm, even when the night itself seemed determined to swallow them whole. Captain Mara Hensley had gone into the darkness, and she had returned soaked, exhausted, bloodied, but carrying every cub alive.